There's a lot of sequences to getting a no-sew block, but I think once you have it in your head what you're doing, it'll just be click, click, click for you. I'm doing a lot of talking, so of course it's taking longer. Mark on quilt. How do you want to define the block? Well, we don't want to mark on quilt. Not at this time. Trace on quilt, no. For a new block, for a no-sew, we don't want to trace on quilt right now. I'm going to use that later in another video, but enter it manually. If I entered it manually, that would be like, you know, blocking out a rectangle. Let me go back here to trace on quilt and talk about this a little bit more. We could take our machine and actually trace around or do our stitch in the ditch around this feathered wreath, if that's what we were going to do. If you were using an applique pattern, you would be using the trace on quilt. This isn't an applique. This is already, a pattern has already been made. So do we want to select an existing block? No. If we select the existing block, right now the only block that's up there is this rectangle that we're putting everything in. If we selected that, everything would be blocked out to sew. So do we want to load from block catalog? Well, we don't have any blocks really this shape to load. After I do it one time, I may want to save the shape as a block, and then we could have brought it in and loaded it. But I'm just trying to give you the options and show you why we're picking. We want to create a pattern contour. So our block, we're still in a block, and I know we were having a discussion about this at MQX, why that terminology is used, the pattern. We're creating a contour around the pattern, but it's still going to be a block. So that's why it's called Create Pattern Contour, but you have to remember we're still creating a new block. So I'm going to hit that. Now it's asking us to select the pattern to contour. I tend to blow this up to really pick at that pattern, because sometimes I have a hard time picking the pattern, finding it. Okay, now I'm going to zoom down. Full zoom. Do you see what happened? If you can see that green around it, and here I'm going to zoom in here just for a minute. Do you see the green around here? I have made the contour around this pattern. That's actually a block. So I'm going to zoom back out here. That's what it looks like well, I'll talk about this for a minute. Tightness, I've got it at 100% tightness. That means that it is as tight, how can I explain this? It's as close to the pattern contour as it can get. Not close in distance, but close in shape. It's representing that shape as close as it can. Or, yeah, it's duplicating that shape around it as best possible. The gap on it, I've got a little bit of a gap going. I think you could see that the first time I zoomed. You see the little bit of the gap right here. Now I can change that gap to whatever I want, and this is we use this when we echo too. Helen's got those videos on echoing. But when we're doing the background fill, we really want to leave a little bit of fudge room, because you all know that when you're stitching out these complicated these detailed background patterns, things tend to shift on us, and if we don't have any gap in there, chances are some of our background fill is going to actually stitch right on that feather. So I like to leave it. Well, it really depends on your batting. You know, if you've got a polyester batting, you want to go maybe 0.15. Cotton, you're just going to be adjusting that and what works best for you. So right now I only have it at 10. I think that's a good, I have it at 0.10. I think that's a good distance for what I'm doing. Smoothness is, it creates, well, you're going to need to play around with this, because I don't think I'm going to explain this too well. If I give it a medium, if I up the smoothness on it, can you see what happened? I still had that. Okay, you can't see my settings. I'm going to keep this zoomed up so you can see what's happening. Right now there is no smoothing on it, and I think it looks a little boxy. And so I want to have just a little bit of smoothness to it. If I have too much smoothness, if I keep going up on the smoothness by clicking the plus or minus key, it will smooth things out even more. That's a high smooth. You can play around with this here again and figure out, how you want it to look. I like it at low, so I think I'm done with it right now. Let me go back and, whoops. I'll go back and get my full screen so you can see what buttons. And I was talking about the low, the smoothing, which is right down here, and I was changing it by putting plus or minus. So we're finished. Now see what happened? It created our no-sew block. That means that it's just going to sew the background and block out this pattern. So we are at the screen now where it's letting us modify the block. Remember, this is a block. This is not the pattern, this is the block. It's asking us if we want to modify it. I don't need to modify that at this point. I'm sure there's other scenarios that might come up that we might want to change, modify that in some way. But right now what I'm doing, I don't need to modify it, so I'm going to go ahead and hit finished. Now here we go back to the clipping confirmation. You have to wait on it a little bit for it to register. It was still pink. I clicked it and it just waited. Right now it's asking what type of stitching around the wreath, around the no-sew block. Before it came up and it was wanting to know around the first block. Now this is the no-sew block that it wants to know, okay, how am I going to go around, how is it going to go around the no-sew block? If we keep it continuous, what will happen is every time it stitches, now a pantograph of course stitches all across. Every time that comes to an area, let me zoom in here, every time that comes to an area that it needs to get back to the other side to complete the pattern, what's going to happen is it's going to go up and it's going to stitch around the top. And then when it needs to come back this way, it's going to stitch around the top again. When it needs to go back to the right, it's going to stitch around the top again. You get what I'm saying? And then when it gets lower on the pattern, as you're doing these lower pantographs, it'll start doing that across the bottom and go back and forth the bottom. And the problem with that is you could end up with a lot of heavy stitching around your applique, or around, well, your applique or your pattern. And it can build up and be kind of heavy. Now, if you want to use that for an artistic, something very artistic, that's another story. But for me, I thought it was too heavy of a buildup and we needed to change that. Now, I'm going to back up the bus a little bit and give you a little bit of a tip or a little bit of a hint. And I didn't do it on this one, but it was Crystal Smythe came up with this. I'm giving her full credit for this, and it made me mad. I didn't think of it sooner, but she thought that before we add our pattern in, or right when we're adding our pantographs in,